I'm Maya Torres, 34 years old, and for 3 years I handed my parents $1,000 every single week. $52,000 a year. But when my 6-year-old daughter blew out her birthday candles alone, crying because Grandma and Grandpa never showed up, I finally asked them why. Their answer made my blood run cold. What I did next destroyed them completely and they never saw it coming. If you've ever been taken advantage of by the people who were supposed to love you most, care for you and get your back at all cost, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my stories. This story about how my family betrayed me when I needed them the most and the revenge that followed is going to shock you. I promise you've never heard anything like this before. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching my story from because I like to know where you are supporting me from. My name is Maya Torres and I need you to understand something before I tell you what I did. I'm not a bad person. I'm a registered nurse at Seattle General Hospital, working the overnight shift in the ICU. I've held the hands of dying patients. I've brought people back from the edge. I know the value of compassion, of showing up when it matters. That's why what my parents did cut so deep. 3 years ago my life looked different. I was married to Kyle Bennett, a software engineer who worked from home. We had our daughter Sophie, who was 3 at the time, with bright brown eyes and this laugh that sounded like wind chimes. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in Greenwood, nothing fancy but it was ours. My parents, Vincent and Pamela Torres, lived 40 minutes away in Bellevue, in the same cramped apartment they'd rented since I was a kid. My childhood was complicated. My parents weren't bad people but they were survivors. My dad worked construction until his back gave out when I was 15. After that he collected disability and odd jobs, never quite making ends meet. My mom cleaned houses, her hands raw and cracked from chemicals, her knees aching from scrubbing floors. They gave me what they could, which wasn't much, but I never went hungry. I learned early that money meant safety, that not having it meant fear. I put myself through nursing school, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and coffee. I graduated with honors and landed the ICU position 2 years later. By the time I was 30, I was making $85,000 a year, which felt like a fortune compared to how I grew up. Cal made even more. We were stable and comfortable. When Sophie came along, I thought, finally my parents can rest. That's when I made my decision. I called my dad one Sunday afternoon, Sophie babbling in the background, and I said, "Dad, I want to help you and Mom. You've struggled long enough. Let me take care of you." His voice cracked. He said, "Maya, you don't have to do that." But I insisted. I told him I'd send $1,000 every week. $52,000 a year. Enough to cover their rent, their groceries, their bills, and then some. Enough so my mom could stop cleaning houses. Enough so my dad could finally relax. He cried. My mom cried when he told her. They kept saying, "Thank you, Mija. Thank you." And I felt good. I felt like I was doing the right thing, like I was being the daughter they deserved. The first year was smooth. Every Monday morning, like clockwork, I'd transfer $1,000 to their account. I never missed a week. Not once. My parents would call to thank me, telling me how much it meant, how they could finally breathe. My mom stopped working. My dad bought a recliner he'd been eyeing for years. They seemed happy and that made me happy. But then things started to shift. It was small at first. Tiny cracks in the foundation I didn't notice until it was too late. My parents started canceling plans. Sophie's second Christmas, they promised to come over for dinner. I spent all day cooking tamales and pozole, Sophie's favorite cookies shaped like stars. They called 2 hours before they were supposed to arrive. Something came up, my mom said, her voice casual, like it didn't matter. "We'll come next time." Sophie asked where Grandma and Grandpa were. I told her they were busy. She nodded, but I saw the confusion in her eyes. The next time didn't come. They missed Easter. They missed Sophie's preschool graduation, where she wore a tiny cap and gown and sang a song about growing up. I sent them videos. My mom texted back, "So cute," with a smiley face emoji. That was it. I told myself they were just adjusting. They were getting older. Maybe the drive was too much. I made excuses for them because the alternative, that they didn't care, was too painful to consider. Then came Sophie's 6th birthday. I spent weeks planning it. Sophie wanted a unicorn party, so I ordered a unicorn cake from a fancy bakery, the kind with edible glitter and a fondant horn. I bought decorations, balloons, streamers, and a piñata shaped like a rainbow. I invited her friends from school, set up games in the backyard, and hired a face painter. It wasn't extravagant, but it was special. It was everything a 6-year-old could want. And I invited my parents. I called them 3 weeks in advance. Mom, Dad, Sophie's birthday is on the 18th, Saturday at 2. Please come. It would mean the world to her. My mom said, of course, Mija. We'll be there. My dad echoed her. Wouldn't miss it for anything. I reminded them the week before. You're still coming, right? My mom sounded almost annoyed. Yes, Maya. We said we would. The morning of the party I texted them. Can't wait to see you guys today. No response. By 1 o'clock the house was full of kids running around, screaming with laughter. Sophie wore a unicorn headband and a sparkly dress, her face painted with pink hearts. She kept looking at the door waiting. When are Grandma and Grandpa coming? She asked. Soon, baby, I said, checking my phone. 2 o'clock came and went. The other parents arrived, dropping off their kids, and still no sign of my parents. I called my mom. No answer. I called my dad. Voicemail. By 3 Sophie stopped asking. She played with her friends, blew out her candles, opened her presents. But I saw it in her face, the disappointment she was trying to hide. She kept glancing at the door, hoping. They never showed up. After the party, after the last kid left and Kyle cleaned up the backyard, I sat Sophie down. Her face paint was smudged, her headband crooked. Grandma and Grandpa couldn't make it, I said gently. But they love you so much. Sophie nodded, her bottom lip trembling. Did I do something wrong? My heart shattered. No, baby. No. You didn't do anything wrong. But that question haunted me. Did I do something wrong? Why didn't they come? That night, after Sophie was asleep, I called my mom. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice bright. Hey, Maya. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Why didn't you come to Sophie's party? Silence. Then, oh, was that today? My blood turned to ice. Yes. It was today. I reminded you 3 times. I'm sorry, Mija. We forgot. We had other plans. Other plans. The words echoed in my head like a death knell. What plans? Your cousin's barbecue. You know, your Aunt Rosa's son, Danny. He was having people over. I couldn't speak. I literally couldn't form words. My cousin Danny, who I'd seen maybe twice in the last decade, had a barbecue. And they chose that over their granddaughter's 6th birthday. You chose a barbecue over Sophie? My voice was shaking. Don't be dramatic, Maya. We'll see her another time. Dramatic. He called me dramatic. Mom, I've been giving you and Dad $1,000 every single week for 3 years. $156,000. And you couldn't show up for one afternoon. Her tone shifted, defensive now. We didn't ask you for that money. You offered. Because I thought you needed it. Because I wanted to help. Well, we appreciate it, but that doesn't mean we owe you our whole lives. I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, my hands trembling. Kyle came down, saw my face, and asked what happened. I told him. He was furious, but he didn't say what I needed to hear. He didn't say, stop giving them money. He just held me while I cried. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. $156,000. That's what I'd given them. And they couldn't give Sophie 2 hours. But it was more than that. It was every missed holiday, every broken promise, every time they made excuses. It was the way my mom said, we didn't ask you for that money, like it was some burden I'd forced on them instead of a lifeline I'd thrown. I thought about Sophie's face when she asked if she'd done something wrong. I thought about the money I could have saved, the vacations we could have taken, the college fund I could have built. I thought about how I'd worked myself to exhaustion to give them comfort, and they'd repaid me with indifference. And something inside me broke. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry and furious, and I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to understand the weight of what they'd done. But I didn't know how. Not yet. The week after Sophie's birthday, I didn't transfer the money. It wasn't a conscious decision at first. Monday morning came, I was getting ready for my shift, and I just didn't do it. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the banking app, and I thought, why should I? They don't appreciate it. They don't even show up. So I didn't send it. Tuesday came. No call from my parents. Wednesday, Thursday, nothing. By Friday I started to wonder if they even noticed. Maybe they had so much saved up now that one missed week didn't matter. The thought made me sick. Saturday afternoon my dad called. Maya, did you forget to send the money this week? Forget. Like it was some automatic bill payment I'd accidentally skipped. No, Dad. I didn't forget. Pause. Is everything okay? Did something happen with the bank? The bank's fine. Then, why didn't you send it? I took a deep breath. Because you didn't come to Sophie's birthday. Another pause, longer this time. Maya, we explained that. We had plans. Plans that were more important than your granddaughter. Don't guilt trip us. We said we were sorry. You said you forgot. That's not the same as sorry. His voice hardened. What do you want from us, Maya? You want us to beg. I want you to care. That's it. Just care. We do care. But we're not going to drop everything every time you want us to. It was one party. Just one day. And we missed it. It happens. You're being unreasonable. Unreasonable. The word hit me like a slap. Am I being unreasonable? I've given you over $150,000, Dad. And you can't even show up for your granddaughter. We didn't ask you for that money, he snapped, echoing my mom's words from the week before. You offered. If it's such a problem, then stop. Maybe I will. Silence. Then quieter. Are you serious? Maybe. He sighed, heavy and irritated. Look, Maya, we'll come see Sophie soon, okay? We'll make it up to her. Just send the money. I'll think about it. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. Part of me wanted to send the money just to avoid the conflict. But a bigger part of me, the part that had watched Sophie blow out her candles alone, refused. I didn't send the money that week either. This time my mom called. Sunday night, late, her voice tight with anger. Maya, what are you doing? What do you mean? You know what I mean. You're punishing us. I'm not punishing you. I'm just reevaluating. Reevaluating. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You're holding money over our heads because we missed one party. It's not about the party, Mom. It's about respect. It's about showing up. We've shown up plenty of times. Name one time in the last 2 years. Silence. Exactly, I said. This is manipulative, Maya. You can't just dangle money in front of us and then take it away when we don't do what you want. I'm not dangling anything. I gave you that money freely because I thought you needed it. But if you don't even care enough to spend time with Sophie, then maybe you don't need it as much as I thought. You're being cruel. I'm being realistic. She hung up on me. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling like the villain in my own story. Was I being cruel? Was I wrong? But then I thought about Sophie. And I knew I wasn't. The third week they called together. Conference call. My dad's voice was calm, measured, like he was negotiating a business deal. Maya, let's talk about this like adults. Okay. We understand you're upset. And we're sorry we missed Sophie's party. Truly. But withholding money isn't the answer. That money helps us survive. You know that. I do know that. That's why I gave it to you. Then why stop now? Because I need to know it means something. I need to know if you appreciate it. We do appreciate it, my mom cut in. But appreciation doesn't mean we owe you our every waking moment. I'm not asking for your every waking moment. I'm asking for 2 hours on my daughter's birthday. And we said we'd make it up to her, my dad said, his voice rising. What more do you want? I want you to mean it. My mom scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. That word again. Child. Like I was throwing a tantrum instead of standing up for myself. If you think I'm being childish, then you don't need my money. Maya. I hung up. That night Kyle and I fought. Not yelling but tense, quiet words in the dark. Maybe you should just give them the money, he said. Cut ties if you want, but don't use money as a weapon. I'm not using it as a weapon. I'm using it as a boundary. It's the same thing. It's not. He sighed. I just don't want this to consume you. It already has. He didn't argue after that. By the 4th week my parents stopped calling. The silence was deafening. I checked my phone obsessively, waiting for something, anything at all. But nothing came. I felt guilty. Sick with it. I lay awake at night, second-guessing everything. Was I overreacting? Was I punishing them too harshly? But then I'd remember Sophie's face. And the guilt would turn back to anger. I started digging. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe validation, maybe proof that I was right to cut them off. I went through old bank statements, tracking every dollar I'd sent. $156,000 over 3 years. $52,000 a year. I started doing math. Their rent was $1,200 a month. $14,400 a year. Utilities maybe $200 a month. Another $2,400. Groceries maybe $400 a month. $4,800. Car insurance, gas, odds and ends another $3,000. That's $24,000 a year. I was giving them $52,000. Where was the other $28,000 going? I started paying attention to their social media. My mom posted constantly pictures of restaurants, new clothes, trips to the casino. My dad posted about buying a new TV, a fancy grill, and weekend getaways to the coast. They weren't struggling. They were thriving. Off my money. And they couldn't even show up for Sophie. That's when I decided. I wasn't just going to stop giving them money. I was going to make them understand what they'd lost. I was going to make them feel the weight of their choices. I was going to take it all back. The idea came to me during a shift at the hospital. I was monitoring a patient, adjusting therefore, when one of the other nurses, Brenda, mentioned something about her brother owing her money. "He's never going to pay me back," she said, shaking her head. "I should have made him sign something." Sign something. That phrase echoed in my head for the rest of my shift. When I got home I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, Googling phrases like loan repayment and family money legal. And that's when I found it. Verbal agreements for loans could be considered legally binding under certain circumstances, especially if there was a clear expectation of repayment. But even better, if you could prove the money was a loan and not a gift, you could take someone to court. A loan. Not a gift. I started thinking. I'd never explicitly called the money a gift. I'd said, "Let me help you." I'd said, "I want to take care of you." But I'd never said, "This is yours, no strings attached." Could I argue it was a loan? I spent the next week researching. I read legal blogs, watched YouTube videos, even consulted with a lawyer friend, Angela Price, over coffee. I didn't tell her the whole story, just asked hypothetically what would happen if someone gave family money and wanted it back. "It depends," she said. "If there's any proof that it was understood as a loan, even implicitly, you might have a case. But it's messy with my family. Judges don't like to get involved." "But it's possible?" "Possible, yeah. You'd need evidence. Text messages, emails, anything showing there was an expectation of repayment or that they acknowledged it as a loan." I didn't have that. But I could create it. I drafted a text message to my parents. Carefully worded and neutral. "Hey Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about the money I've been sending. I want to make sure we're on the same page moving forward. Can we talk about how you plan to pay it back once you're more stable?" I stared at the message for an hour before sending it. My heart pounded when I hit send. The response came fast. My mom. "Pay it back? Maya, you never said anything about paying it back." Perfect. I thought that was understood. "I've been helping you get back on your feet. Once you're stable, I'd appreciate being repaid." My dad chimed in. "We assumed this was a gift. You never mentioned repayment." I didn't think I needed to. "It's a lot of money, Dad. I can't just give away that much without expecting something in return." My mom. "This is ridiculous. You can't change the terms now." "I'm not changing anything. I'm just clarifying. Let's talk about a repayment plan." The conversation devolved from there. They accused me of manipulation, of being greedy, of holding money over their heads. But they also crucially acknowledged the amount. $156,000. In writing. I saved every message. Screenshotted everything. Then I drafted a formal email. Professional and cold. "Mom and Dad, after our recent conversations, it's clear we have different understandings about the money I've provided over the past 3 years. To avoid further confusion, I want to clarify that I consider the $156,000 I've sent you to be a loan, not a gift. I'm requesting repayment in full within a reasonable time frame. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed." I sent it. And then I waited. The response came 2 days later. My dad called, his voice shaking with rage. "Are you out of your mind? I'm just being clear. You can't do this. You can't just decide it was a loan after the fact." "I didn't decide after the fact. I always intended for you to pay it back once you were stable." "That's a lie." "Is it? Because I've been supporting you for 3 years and you've spent that time going to casinos and buying TVs. You're stable, Dad. You just don't want to pay me back." "We don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll need to figure it out." He hung up. My mom sent a flurry of texts calling me heartless, ungrateful, and cruel. I didn't respond. I just saved the messages. A week later, I received a letter. Not from them, but from a lawyer. They'd hired someone. The letter stated that my parents disputed my claim, that the money was clearly a gift given without expectation of repayment, and that any attempt to pursue legal action would be countered aggressively. I smiled when I read it, because now we were in legal territory. And I had evidence. I called Angela. This time I told her everything. The money, the missed birthday, the text messages. She listened, her expression shifting from skeptical to intrigued. "This is insane," she said when I finished. "Can I win?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe. It's not a slam dunk, but you have a case. The fact that they acknowledged the amount and didn't outright call it a gift in your initial messages helps. And if you can prove they were financially stable enough not to need it, that strengthens the argument that it was a loan, not charity. What do I need to do? File a claim in civil court. Small claims court has a limit, but this exceeds that, so you'd need to go through regular civil court. It'll be expensive. And it'll destroy your relationship with them. They already destroyed it." She nodded. "Then let's do it." I filed the claim a week later. It felt surreal typing out my parents' names as defendants. But with each word, each form I filled out, I felt lighter. Like I was finally taking control. The court date was set for 2 months out. In the meantime, my parents lost their minds. They called constantly, left voicemails begging me to drop it, threatening me, crying. I didn't answer. My Aunt Rosa called my mom's sister. "Maya, what are you doing? You're tearing this family apart." They tore it apart when they chose a barbecue over Sophie. It was one mistake. It was 3 years of mistakes. She tried to guilt me, tried to make me see reason, but I'd already made my decision. This wasn't about the money. It was about Sophie. It was about respect. It was about making them understand that their actions had consequences. And I was going to make sure they understood. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, rows of wooden benches that creaked when you shifted your weight. I sat on one side with Angela. My parents sat on the other with their lawyer, a middle-aged man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sophie was with Kyle's mom that day. I didn't want her anywhere near this. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, called the case. Torres versus Torres. "Miss Torres, you're claiming your parents owe you $156,000, alleging it was a loan, not a gift. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." He looked at my parents. "And you dispute this?" My dad stood, his voice shaky. "Yes, Your Honor. Our daughter gave us that money willingly. We never agreed to pay it back." The judge nodded, her expression neutral. "Let's hear the evidence." Angela went first. She presented the text messages, the emails, the bank statements showing every transfer. She highlighted the messages where I'd mentioned repayment and they'd acknowledged the amount. She argued that the sheer sum, $156,000, exceeded what any reasonable person would consider a gift, especially to parents who weren't in dire straits. Then she dropped the bomb. She dug into their finances with my help. Bank records showing their spending, social media posts showing their lifestyle. Dinners at expensive restaurants. Casino trips. A new car. None of it screamed struggling. "Your Honor," Angela said, "the defendants weren't in need of this money for survival. They were using it to fund a lifestyle." Ms. Torres believed she was helping them get back on their feet, with the implicit understanding that once they were stable, they'd repay her. The evidence shows they were stable the entire time. My parents' lawyer argued that the money was a gift, that I'd offered it freely, that there was no written agreement. He painted me as vindictive, as someone trying to punish her parents for a minor slight. "She's angry they missed her daughter's birthday," he said. "So she's weaponizing money to hurt them. This isn't about a loan. It's about revenge." He wasn't wrong. But he couldn't prove it. The judge listened to both sides, her face unreadable. When the arguments were done, she sat back, steepling her fingers. "This is a difficult case," she said. "Family disputes involving money rarely have clear answers. However, I'm inclined to agree with the plaintiff on one point. $156,000 is an extraordinary sum. For Ms. Torres to claim this was a loan is not unreasonable, especially given the evidence that the defendants were financially stable." My heart started to race. "That said," the judge continued, The lack of a written agreement complicates matters. In cases like this, the court typically looks for explicit evidence of intent. The text messages suggest Ms. Torres expected repayment, but they're not definitive. I felt my stomach drop. However, she said, and I held my breath, the defendant's spending patterns as shown in the financial records suggest they were not in need of this money for basic survival. That lends credibility to Ms. Torres's claim that this was a loan, not charity. He paused, looking at my parents. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The defendants are ordered to repay $156,000 in full, with a structured payment plan to be determined. Payments will begin within 30 days. The courtroom went silent. My parents looked like they'd been struck. My mom started crying loud, heaving sobs. My dad just stared at the judge, his mouth open. Your Honor, their lawyer started, but the judge held up a hand. The ruling stands. The court is adjourned. She banged the gavel and it was over. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I was floating. Angela squeezed my shoulder. You did it, she said. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. The fallout was immediate. My parents called that night, both of them screaming. I didn't answer. They left voicemails, my mom begging, my dad threatening. You've ruined us, he said. We'll never forgive you for this. I deleted them all. My Aunt Rosa called, furious. How could you do this to your own parents? They did it to themselves. Over a birthday party? It was never about the party. She hung up. I didn't hear from her again. Other family members reached out, some supportive, most not. My cousin Danny, whose barbecue had been the catalyst for all this, sent me a message. You're a monster. I blocked him. Kyle asked me if I was okay. I told him I was. I wasn't sure if that was true. The payment plan was set up through the court. My parents had to pay $2,000 a month for the next 6.5 years. They couldn't afford it, not without drastically changing their lifestyle. They had to sell their new car. They had to cancel their trips. They had to move to a cheaper apartment. I didn't feel bad. 3 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my mom. Her voice was small, broken. Maya, please. Can we talk? I stayed silent. We're sorry, she said. We're so sorry. We didn't realize. We didn't understand. Understand what? How much we hurt you. How much we took you for granted. I felt something crack inside me. Not forgiveness, but something close. An opening. You missed Sophie's birthday, I said quietly. You chose a barbecue over your granddaughter. And you didn't even care. I know, and I'm sorry. We were selfish. We were awful. Please, Maya. Let us make it right. How? She didn't have an answer. I sighed. You want to make it right? Show up. Be present. Not for me, but for Sophie. She's the one you hurt. We will. I promise. Prove it. I hung up. A week later, on a Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there, looking older than I remembered. My mom held a wrapped present. My dad had a bouquet of flowers. We're here for Sophie, my mom said. Sophie peeked around my leg, curious. Who are they? Your grandparents, I said. Her eyes lit up. Really? I looked at my parents. They looked at me, pleading. I stepped aside. Come in. They spent 2 hours with Sophie. Playing, laughing, apologizing to her for missing her birthday. Sophie, being 6, forgave them instantly. Kids are like that. When they left, my mom hugged me. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't hug her back. But I didn't pull away either. They kept showing up after that. Every week without fail. They paid their monthly installment to the court and they came to see Sophie. Slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. I never forgave them, not fully. But I let them try. 2 years later, my parents finished their payments. $156,000 repaid in full. The court closed the case. They called me the day the last payment went through. It's done, my dad said. We're square. Yeah, I said. We're square. But we weren't. Not really. The money was repaid, but the hurt wasn't gone. Probably never would be. So they kept showing up. For Sophie's 8th birthday, they were there. For Christmas, for school plays, for every little moment. They became the grandparents I'd wanted them to be all along. Me. I learned something. Love isn't unconditional. Not really. It requires effort, respect, and presence. And when someone takes that for granted, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to demand better. I don't regret what I did. Taking them to court, forcing them to pay me back. It wasn't about the money. It was about making them see. Making them understand that actions have consequences. Sophie asks me sometimes, why were Grandma and Grandpa gone for so long? I tell her the truth in a way she can understand. Sometimes people need to learn how to show up. It takes time. She nods, satisfied with that answer. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm not the hero either. I'm just someone who refused to be taken for granted. And in the end, that's enough. If this story hit you, if you've ever felt overlooked or taken advantage of by your family, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. And hit that subscribe button because I'm reading every single one. Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is stand up for ourselves, even when it means standing against the people we love. Thank you for listening.